Hi, I'm Simon Tells Tales and this is my third in the 5-part series of videos looking at TSR's 1996 campaign setting, Netheril Empire of Magic by Slade with Jim Butler. In the first two videos, we traced the founding of the Nethese Empire up to the zenith of its accomplishments, ending with the rise of Karsus, Netheril's youngest and strongest Arch Mage, and the loss of the Nether Scrolls. In this video, we'll be looking at the fall of the Empire, with the following videos looking at a detailed breakdown of the campaign setting and some great story hooks if you want to launch your own Netheril campaign. Together, we have seen the spread of Nethere's floating cities across the land surrounding the narrow sea. The Archmages, taking advantage of the powers unveiled to them through the use of the Mithril, have filled their cities with the most exquisite inventions Faerun will ever see. Walk through the streets of these twisting airborne citadels with me right now and you will see marvels that the world will never see again. Strange devices that can project images and sounds, portal gates that allow Nethere's men and women to move from one city to another, even flying ships that carry passengers and cargo from one city to another and even up into the depths of realm space. For the Netherese, magic is an essential part of their everyday life, and for those living in the airborne cities, it would be impossible to imagine life without it, nor would they actually want to. But the magical weave was never meant to be harnessed like the Netherese have harnessed it. Each of the cities has at least one Mithril. Its opaque white form allows for a constant conduit that reaches deep into the magical realm. But that constant access to the weave means that magic slips through all the time, even when no mage is there to command or shape it. And without mages there to command or shape the magic, the energy slips out into the air, twisting, spiralling, plummeting, and soaking into the earth below, soaking it in raw magic. For the Netherese who have never considered life without magic, this magical radiation isn't something that they ever had to factor into their plans. But let's look closer right now. We are now 3,340 years after the founding of the Empire, and we find ourselves at the rocky outcrops that litter this land, at the dark places in the mountain ranges where shadows always linger, and where cave systems stretch deep beneath the earth. Here, in amongst the twilight darkness of caves that are too far away from any mineral seam for miners to ever think them to be worth exploring, are the tall, conical shapes of creatures with twisting limbs and row after row of barbed black teeth. These are the phaerimm, reclusive ancient creatures who feed on magic and hide from the sight of civilizations growing and spreading across Faerun. Listen now, listen to the sound of wailing and moaning stretching through the caves. Here in this corner, see a mother and father, their conical bodies bent over a child. Down this passage, a family of phaerimm stood around the dying body of an elder. Their children are dying off. Their old and infirm are dying from ailments that should have been minor. There is a glut of magic, too much. The magic on which the phaerimm thrive has grown now to the point of poisoning them. From their homes in the mountains, the phaerimm slip out, moving over the world in solitary quests to discover the source of the magical excess that is bringing about their doom. It's not long until they find their answer in the skies above. The Empire of Netheril, its Archmages, its Mithril, its floating cities radiating waste magic around the realm that surrounds the inner sea. And so the phaerimm fight back, slowly and in secret. casting magic drain spells beneath the floating cities that spread across the lands. By doing this, they drain the arcane pollution that has been poisoning their families, but the side effect is that the magic drain spell kills off everything living. The land, the soil, the grass. Meadows turn into deserts beneath the floating cities. Watch with me now as the desert wastes begin to spread. Follow the movements of Netherese mages who float down from the cities to take soil samples and files of sand to study the effects in their laboratories above. See as the mages, unable to understand what has caused the desert wastes, move the floating cities onward towards unspoiled green terrain. And where the floating cities move, the phaerimm follow, spreading sandy desert across the realm. In the halls of these floating cities, mages now meet with each other in desperate, hushed voices. In the streets, citizens of the Empire share panicked rumours about the land below. Even the Arch Mages themselves, normally reclusive in their lichdom, communicate telepathically, sending messages across the weave as they scry with their magics to uncover the cause of the devastation below. They know that a force is working against them, but the reclusive phaerimm, secretive in their slow, gradual assault, escape the eyes of even the most powerful of the Empire's archmages. Occasionally, in a wizard's workshop on the ground, or in the halls of an arcane university, a mage stumbles dangerously close to the source of the desert spread. On those occasions, magical explosions or vicious attacks rob the wizards of their lives as the phaerimm emerge from the shadows, slaying anyone whose scrying gets too close. Even we, in our omnipresent state, cannot see the attacks, only the aftermaths. The burned out libraries, the halls lined with bodies of the dead. The phaerimm leave no survivors behind in their attacks. And as the slow creep of the desert spreads across the Empire, the phaerimm achieve a level of terror and unrest and tension that no wave of orc attacks ever could. In the streets of the floating cities, fear rises and arcane plots begin to grow as mages vie amongst themselves for power. Poisons, daggers, spells of deathly touch rip through the tears of Netheril civilization, while in the streets, crime spikes. And as the citizens begin to look after their own best interests, the cities become dark places where mages look to defend or preemptively strike against their neighbours. Gone is the sense of awe and mystery that once filled this empire with light. As tension fills the empire, let us return to that majestic vision of Karsus's enclave, flying high in the clouds. Truly, it is the most majestic of all the cities in Netheril. Here, Karsus has given over the running of the city to a council of mages and has retreated deep, deep into the central tower. We can see him now, bent over his books, whispering to himself as he pores over celestial diagrams painted in gilt, asking himself how it would be possible to raise himself up to the powers of a god. Perhaps, if calamity had not struck, Karsus would not have pushed forward with the arrogance of his plans, but today, 3,520 years after the founding of the Empire, terror is spreading through each and every enclave across Netheril. Mages are locking themselves in their workshops. Centuries-old rivalries are climaxing in preemptive duels and attacks between mages as fear grips hold of the population. Because today, the Arch Mage Karsus, now almost 3,000 years old, has vanished. No one knows what has caused the mage to disappear, but the population cannot escape the fear that this is linked to the devastating desert spread that is ripping through the land below. From the height of his tower, Karsus looks out at his city, and he sees chaos and confusion erupting around him, feels the magical weave being tugged and torn as mage turns on mage. And in a desperate attempt to stabilise the empire, Karsus seizes the opportunity to do the unthinkable. He unleashes a level 12 spell, one that will take on the powers of Mystra herself. Locked back inside his study, Karsus reaches deep into the weave, deeper than any mage has ever dared to reach before. Tendrils of dark magic rip the air and the space around him, distorting time, space, physics, as the tower bends and twists and falls back in on itself. And it works. Very briefly, for a few seconds, Karsus elevates himself to godhood. The secrets of the universe open up to him. Magic pours into his body, ripping through him, filling him, consuming him, and then tearing. Tearing at Karsus, tearing at the weave, tearing at the universe itself, as the essence of the world begins to unravel, as Karsus forces himself into a level of existence that no mortal was ever meant to join. Although she is unseen to us, the goddess Mystra only just manages to step in time to stop this madness. The only way to truly stop Karsus is for Mystra to halt the weave itself, causing, if only for a few minutes, magic to disappear from the world. In doing so, Mystra manages to stop Karsus's spell and heal and restore the weave. But in the moments where magic is gone from the world, disaster strikes the empire. Without access to the magic of the weave, the spells holding those cities to the sky fails, and the floating cities of Netheril come crashing towards the ground. City after city plunge towards the earth. Rock and stone shatter, craters spread across the empire. The twisted and broken bodies of the Nethese are lost in the collapse. Each of the cities of Netheril fall, and all but 3 are destroyed as they hit the ground. 3 cities, Anoria, Azrim, and Holondath, were suspended so high in the sky that by the time they reached the ground, Mystra had restored the weave, magic had returned, and their fall, though not stopped, was slowed. Watch these cities now, the 3 of them coming crashing down into the desert. Rock shatters. Deep rifts appear across the sides of buildings. Schisms run down the streets. Hundreds die, but thousands survive. It is a bittersweet reprieve. Across the empire, orcs, bandits and ogres see the clouds of destruction and debris left by the falling empire, and they ready themselves for battle, rushing over the ground cities of the empire, slaying everyone within, and then picking clean the ruins of the fallen cities. For a little while, the 3 fallen, crooked cities that survived the fall do live on. But in the end, one by one, they fall and are lost to time. Azram is destroyed by plague. Anoria falls to orc attacks. Holondath dies slowly in a series of short and repetitive wars with the kingdom of Cormanther. And the few survivors of the Netheril Empire scatter across Faerun. And with that, the once mighty empire of Netheril becomes no more. Thank you. I'm Simon Tells Tales, and this has been the third in my 5-part series looking at TSR's 1996 campaign setting, Netheril Empire of Magic by Slade with Jim Butler. When we meet again, we'll be looking at the sourcebook for the campaign itself, going into detail, discussing what works, what doesn't, and how it can be adapted for 5th edition. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe for more videos exploring some of the classic Forgotten Realms Dungeons & Dragons settings. If you've got a favourite one out there that you'd love me to cover as well, let me know in the comments below. Until then, I'll wish you goodbye, and we'll meet again when we look in depth at the campaign setting for this adventure.